Hi, everyone. My name is Jared Schiffman. I'm the founder and CEO of Perch Interactive. Perch is a New York-based startup. We're down on lovely Canal Street. And Perch is all about interacting with products and interacting with media at the same time. And it's a media platform or display designed for retail environments. So while Perch is here, and that is the best way to experience it, just since you're not all standing right here, I thought I'd show you a little video of what Perch is all about, and then that'll probably be the most exciting point, and then everything else will just be black and white type and so on and so forth. Okay, so hopefully we have sound. This is always the issue with the clicker and then the play button. Play. So hopefully that gives you some sense of what Perch is all about. A couple of things that are not obvious from that video is that all of the examples you see there, it's literally just a white table. So the same table that we have here, which is a piece of plywood with laminate on top of it, or it could be a piece of corian. Pretty much any light-colored surface will work well on. And it's designed that way because in store environments, you can't always just replace all their fixtures. They really like it when you can use existing fixtures in the store. And while the Perch that you see here is sort of on this big stand and has the thing sitting at the top, it's designed to be integrated into stores so that it essentially disappears. So all the technology is in the box at the top, and everything there on down is just exactly what you see. So this gives you some sense of the sort of types of products that we work with, everything from consumer electronics to accessories to fragrances to handbags and a lot of shoes. One of our first big bits of press from Mashable said, this is the future of shoe shopping, at which point we got a ton of requests for shoes and many requests, and this is a good lesson for me. I can't tell you how many companies called that were like, so I know that you make shoe displays, but will this also work with handbags? And it was like, or something like product X, and it's like, yes, actually, it's not just for shoes. Though that may be a good business just on its own. And Perch is really a sort of a interesting model for interaction. And my background's in computer science and interaction design. And very simply, we were looking at the retail space from an interaction design perspective, and we're thinking about, what are the interactions of the retail space? And it didn't take a long time to realize, the interactions of retail, other than walking into the store, navigating through the store, so on and so forth, is picking up and touching products. So if we could track that, then we can react to that and use that as a trigger for displaying all types of media. One thing we realized soon after that, once we did a little bit of research, is that that when you're holding a product, it's sort of like the most prime moment in the retail space. It's basically it's the greatest signifier that you are interested in that product. You're not only looking at it, you've picked it up, you're holding it in your hands, and there's quite a bit of retail research that says if you are holding or even just touching a product, you're 40 to 60% more likely to buy it. So in a weird way, the way that we're designing our displays now is kind of through the circular logic, just getting people to pick it up. That is the end goal, even though from their perspective, it's like they pick it up because they want to learn, because they want to see the media. Maybe it's educational, maybe there's branding. So that brings us to the next point, which is in terms of the media that we show on Perch, and you'll see a lot of examples of it. In some cases, it's purely educational. In some cases, it's very much branding oriented. So the sort of high-level lifestyle type stuff. OK, so that's pretty much, it gives you a good sense of the product. Let me tell you a little bit about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. OK, covered that. OK. This is our team. Speaking of 6 people, we have 6 people. We are in the midst of a seed round right now, so hopefully we'll soon be 40 people. And it's really a core team of really great software designers, industrial designers. You may have seen our industrial designer here earlier setting up the unit. That's also his job. And graphic designers as well. The core technology involves 3 components. There is the Perch hardware, what we call the core software, and then the Perch cloud. The Perch hardware is what you see behind you, at least the box on the top. Everything coming down is also Perch hardware, though that's not the core hardware. The software is, what we call the Perch software, is what lives in a unit itself, and that does, well, I'll tell you what it does in a second. And then the Perch cloud, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. So the key features of the Perch hardware, my background is in interactive media installations, sort of like large-scale, high-tech installations for museums and corporate lobbies and wine bars and things like that. And the products we used to do were like these, $500,000 projects that would take 8 weeks to install, and you had to talk to engineers and architects and everything. So the goal with Perch was something, and this is like my personal goal, is like, I don't want to be standing on a ladder, talking to an architect and realizing that there's like a pipe in the way. I just want something that I can hang on the wall. So that was the first goal, to get something that you could just really easily install. And with Perch, you can just hang it on a wall. You can mount it just like a projector you see up here. There's a lot of different ways to install it. It mounts above a table, and it works on pretty much any surface that's not reflective or glass. And we're in the process of developing a lot of other form factors, everything from what you see here, to a much smaller display for cosmetics or cameras, things like that, and building it into shelving systems. So there's a lot of standards in the retail industry in terms of fixturing, so we're trying to align with a lot of those to make it easy to install. Inside that box, and it's not probably so surprising, there is a laser LED projector. The nice thing there is that you never have to change the bulb. There's a computer, and there's a 3D sensor, as well as our very nice custom enclosure that Neo, who you saw earlier, designed. The Perch software, which lives internally internal to that box, handles quite a number of different functions. These are just 4 of them. Obviously, it's producing sort of graphics in real time. It's tracking all the hands that are on the table, so it's all multi-user, and all the products on the table. That's really the core technology. It's generating analytics based on every event. So every time that you touch a product or pick up a product, we're tracking that data, and it's syncing with the Perch cloud. So it's getting media from the Perch cloud, and it's pushing analytics back to it. So that brings us to the cloud. Oh no, sorry, that brings us to how the software is implemented. The core software is based in C++, OpenGL. There's a library called Poco that my previous company developed. We use a lot of OpenCV for the vision processing, and a handful of other libraries as well to do the networking. Finally, there is the Perch cloud. And the cloud has sort of 4 uses that are all bundled into one. First, account management. So if we're working with a given retailer and they have, let's say it's like Foot Locker, they have 1,000 stores, or it's actually more like 1,500 stores. They want to be able to manage all their units from one central location, not even one central, just from the web, from anywhere. It handles that. It also handles all of the, allows us to do remote monitoring. So if there's ever an issue with the unit, we can find that out through the cloud. And it records all of the analytics. So like I said, every touch, every pickup goes to the cloud. And it does media distribution. So if you're Foot Locker and you have a new campaign, or Nike has a new campaign, whatever it is, you can push it to 1,000 stores or however many stores you have overnight, and it's in store the next day. And the analytics is pretty exciting, because there's so many different ways to slice the data. Everything from, you can see it per product, per day, across stores, and you can look at sort of trends. We're working with Kate Spade now, and they're one of our biggest clients at the moment. And they have, it's 8 stores in the US and 2 in London. And there's one store on Fifth Avenue, at Fifth Avenue and 20th Street, and that store, I don't know the exact sales numbers, but just based on the analytics alone, I can tell you that store is easily 5 to 10 times as busy as almost any of their other stores. It's interesting to see, like their Newbury Street store in Boston doesn't even have a quarter of the traffic as that store on Fifth Avenue does. So those are sort of 3 pieces of technology, and they all kind of get sewn together. The cloud itself is built on Ruby on Rails. We use lots of Google Charts, and it's on top of Heroku, which is on top of Amazon, like everyone else. So one of the probably the most difficult part of the technology to develop has been the sensing. Anyone who's ever done computer vision projects knows that is just when you think you've solved the problem, there's another problem, and actually very much like the speech recognition issues we heard about earlier, there's always sort of misinterpretation. So I just wanted to put up a couple notes here on some things that we've learned if you're designing a product that involves any kind of advanced sensing. So first thing is to define quote unquote ideal operation. Now, once you've defined that ideal operation, understand that it will never be operated in that way. But it's at very least good to write down how you think it should be operated. So in our case, that pretty much means picking up a product and touching the table and the way that you see it used up there. That said, people use it in all kinds of ways that you don't expect. We actually, there's a problem that we discovered, and this is actually a long time ago when we did a project for, this is not through Perch, through my other company, for the St. Regis, it's a restaurant called Adore at the St. Regis, which closed about a year ago. It was a Landau-Kost restaurant. And we made this interactive bar top for them. And we pretty much figured that people, when they touch something, especially if they're doing it intentionally, sort of touch with their pointing finger, and we were tracking that, and it worked perfectly well. We found out very early on, and this brings us to point number 4 here, that there are certain people, especially people who say go to very fancy restaurants, and maybe those people are wearing lots of rings, and they're very heavy rings, who sort of point like this in this kind of motion that doesn't align with any pointing behavior that we had expected. And so suffice to say, everyone in our office we had to sort of simulate how to touch the device as if you were wearing 4 to 5 carat rings at the same time, which even to this day, I'll be totally honest, that's why the buttons on Perch are pretty big. It's because, while we are accurate to a ½ inch of your fingertip, if your fingertip is buried beneath 3 or 4 rings, it's difficult to detect. We actually thought of implementing something that would detect the rings, and then based on that, change the sensing algorithm. So other notes, anytime you're dealing with any kind of sensing technologies, you're basically making something that's it's always either oversensitive and it triggers instantly, or it's undersensitive and you have to sort of pound on it to make it go at all. And you'd think that those two things would be very far apart, when in fact in reality those undersensing and oversensing are actually very close to each other, and it's just a very little bit of wiggle room between them. So it's but at least being able to identify at any given time, are we oversensing, are we undersensing, is good to know along the way. Testing in actual sensing conditions, so not just the people who are there, but the entire environment. There's any number of things that you won't necessarily expect that could affect sensing technology. In particular, if you're doing anything that involves light, there's always going to be external lighting. If you're doing anything that involves a camera, that it has to be really accurate. Vibrations in the room, including from air conditioning, can sometimes induce resonance or whatever, or some even tiny micro vibrations in the camera will throw off the sensing by ½ a degree or a degree, which when you project that out 6 to 7 feet actually ends up being about 1 inch to 2 inches. So what you thought was accurate to ½ a centimeter is suddenly accurate to 3 centimeters. I think I made the point earlier about getting non-engineers to test. This is actually a major problem for us internally, that literally Perch in general has no learning curve. That said, there are certain ways that it likes to be used better than others. And everyone who's new to the office, within about a half day or maybe 2 days, discovers kind of like the really nice way to use it versus the sort of like arbitrary user. And it's impossible to it literally is impossible to not do that once you've learned it. So now we're continually getting new recruits off of Craigslist just to come in and like try things out. Fifth point here, just accounting for noise. Oftentimes people are thinking of noise just in one dimension. In addition to space and time, it's just that there's noise in multiple dimensions, and you have to be aware of it at all times. An issue that we discovered pretty recently with some of our analytics is we were seeing some really crazy numbers, like it was 99% fine, and then every so often there'd be one product that was getting 1,000 pickups per day, which unfortunately we know that's not true, and it turns out that it was just sort of sitting on the edge of this sort of sensing cliff that we didn't think it would be close to at all, but in some situations there's a shoe that gets turned some odd way, and it's whatever it is, you get onto these sort of barrier situations. So we put a little debounce in there, now it works fine. And then last point, which was also true, was brought up in the speech recognition example, is reducing the latency. That sometimes you do have to make decisions that, yes, it would be perfect to have this sensing algorithm that, does things exactly the way you want it, but if it takes 3 seconds to get there, you're better off just doing something that's, 90% there, but gives you an answer very, very quickly, because people do get frustrated. And it also creates this really weird feedback loop, actually, like you saw in the video in the car, where if it's more than a half second, people start to react to the thing that they're, it just creates a strange feedback loop where people are reacting to the mistake, and you end up in a bad situation. So lots of lessons learned about sensing. Some additional resources that I thought I should share, and this is maybe for people who are doing new hardware startups. Some of these you may know about, some of these maybe not. Of course, McMaster Carr, which most of you probably know about, is one of the largest online hardware stores. What's amazing in New York, and I'm still stunned by this to this day, they will deliver almost anything within 1 day for their regular shipping charge. We buy these aluminum things all the time, which are 8 feet long, and all the other shipping companies throw up, it's a major issue. Uline charges $100 to do something like that. Somehow, McMaster Carr, you can be I need 3 screws and this 8-foot thing and 20, and it's the next day in New York, which is unbelievable. So, love them. Another one is eMachine Shop. I don't know if most people know about this company. And this is not even just for startups, and just for hobbyists too. It's an amazing company. It's been around almost 10, 15 years. It's a company, you download their CAD software, sort of like SketchUp. It's pretty simple. But what's awesome about it is everything is based around their actual manufacturing techniques, and it's quoted in real time, and you print it you print it by sending it off to them. And it's sort of if you've been through any other sort of manufacturing process and all the frustrations of dealing with fabricators and just even getting quotes from them and then them screwing it up, it solves every problem of that. And the best part about it, well, one of the best parts about it is that the pieces that come back from your machine shop are they look like finished, real products. We've ordered laser cut pieces before, and it just comes back pristine, which you rarely really get from an average fabricator. Okay. Protocase, we did recently switch from eMachine Shop to Protocase. This is a Canadian company that makes all kinds of cases like ours. They're really great. It's 2-week turnaround, and it's really cheap. Projector Central, if you're doing anything with projectors, highly recommend that. Southside is a local Brooklyn-based fabricator that we use for sort of custom projects. They're great. And then Pets and Powder Coaters. I say that I bring these guys up only because there are very few powder coaters at least they're hard to find, and they're not oftentimes the friendliest people. These guys are really great. I think it's because they do it based on area, square footage, and our parts are always it's 7 square feet, and they're okay, even if we have a lot of things, they're used to powder coating 50-foot things, I guess. So a couple quick lessons learned. Think about packaging early on. There's a long time where we were still carrying around Perch by hand. So that's one note. Making sure you understand ventilation well. You really can't be too liberal at the beginning to make sure, because heat will kill things very quickly, and that's just a bad problem to have. Never make assumptions about the installation site. I think I brought that up before. A little press, obviously, helps a lot. We've been pretty fortunate in, despite spending very little effort on press, getting a fair amount thus far. We don't sell software. That with Perch, there's a lot of confusion early on. They're like, oh, this is the hardware, and this is the software piece. And we tried selling them separately or pricing them separately and realized that people just think of it as a box. And even though the majority of the technology is in the software, that's fine. We're going to sell you this as sort of this, or at least this piece of hardware. This is an interesting thing in terms of pricing. We've done a lot of experimentation with pricing along the way. And as far as I can tell, this heuristic is generally effective, which is that you should price things based on things that are of similar size. So, fortunately, in a way, everyone's like, oh, can you make this smaller? Can you make this smaller? Yes, but don't expect it to get any cheaper. So in a way, it's good that we kind of have this medium-sized product because people expect it to pay for it as if it's like this medium-sized product. At one point, Perch, we were selling them for $10K each. We dropped the price to $7,500, and we're now selling like 3 times as many. There's just the psychology of pricing is always fascinating in terms of what people perceive things are worth. We're also leasing it now. Another lesson, and this is more on the B2B side, which I wasn't totally prepared for, especially with retail. It's a very long sales cycle, so just because the demo goes really well, and just because everything seems to be going well, don't assume that the deal's going to close in a week or 2. It's like 4 to 8 months. So that you learn that after 4 to 8 months. And the last piece, and this is a mistake that I had made early on. We were so happy to get our first sale that we then sort of forgot, when actually that we were just entirely focused on those people for a while, and we kind of forgot that we were like, oh, we now need to sell another. So just continually thinking about the customer, after the product is sold. I think the doorbot example is a perfect example of that. That just because the product's out the door doesn't mean that you're free of it. You need to continue to support it, and it's now a major part of what we do. So. Some quick lessons to be learned. Well, one, we're finishing up our seed round, so that's going to be a major lesson for us. I would love to hear any advice people have about hiring a sales team, something I haven't done before but we'll be doing soon. I'd love to hear about how you expand from one product to many. That's a process that we're going to be also doing soon. And this is a major piece, international distribution. We get enormous amount of interest overseas. I've been taking it a little bit slowly, trying to figure out the best way to handle that. Any advice on that would be much appreciated. And then the last piece, which my wife is continually reminding me about, that there is this thing outside of work. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but trying to figure out how to balance that. There's sleep and work and something else. So at MIT, they used to say there's the 3 things. There's sleep, social life, and grades, and you can choose 2 out of 3. So I think in this case, trying to get all 3 done is a little harder than expected. So thank you guys so much, and if you have any questions or want to come play with this afterward, feel free.